Okay, and we are live. Welcome, everybody, to Friday Night Bible Bites. We're studying the Bible here at Our Redeemer Lutheran Church in Lake City, Florida. We have been studying the Gospel of Mark this year, and it is a topical study rather than just front to back. So we're jumping around a little bit and we're pulling in context and clarification and corroboration from the other Gospels, from some of the epistles, and even the Old Testament. And some of the topics we've covered already was we did a couple introductory sessions. We talked about the miracles of Jesus. We talked about the parables told by Jesus. We talked about the two great commands given by Jesus. Really given before, but reiterated by Jesus in response to his questioners. And those two great commands are to love the Lord with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. We had a session about Jesus as a, what was the wording, the way they phrased it? A prophet without honor. And how really every prophet has been dishonored and rejected by by the Hebrew people. And now, the current session that we're on is called The Cross and the Kingdom. And we are discussing the prediction that Jesus made, the multiple predictions Jesus made to his disciples 3 separate times in the book of Mark, in chapter 8, in chapter 9, and again in chapter 10, where he predicted, or he foretold, that he was going to be captured, tried, crucified, killed, and come back from the dead. And that was a really hard thing for the disciples to try to wrap their minds around. It wasn't what they expected out of the Messiah. They believed he was the Messiah, but they had a hard time believing that it was going to go down the way that he was telling them. And he told them again and again. And that's what we're talking about last week, and that's what we're continuing to talk about this week. So we are, in our handouts, we're on page 53. At the bottom, question number 3. So let's get into it. So question number 3. Jesus rebukes Peter because Satan speaks through Peter. Oh, hold on. Before we get really into this, I just want to let everybody know at home, if you have any prayer requests, please feel free to put them in the chat box down here. I see we're getting some participation. Hello, hi. If you have any prayer requests, please feel free to put them in that chat box. If it's a private prayer request, please send it to us through a private message, and we will pray it for you off the air. And please, if you have anything other than a prayer request, if you've got questions, comments, concerns, anything that you'd like to contribute to the study, you're welcome to do that as well. And while we're on the subject, we've got Facebook. You can follow us. Don't friend us on Facebook. Follow us on Facebook. And please, if you're watching right now, please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. We're going to be here every Friday, same time, same place, here in Lake City on Highway 47. We have a delicious meal at 6:30, and then right around 7:15, we begin our study. So please, if you're in the area, we welcome you. And then Sundays, of course, worship service is at 10 a.m., and that's also followed by a fellowship meal and a Bible study. And that's a Bible study led by Pastor Fair, who actually knows something. So we just do our best. My name's Kellen Bartley. I'm an elder in the congregation, but I've not been to seminary and studied half as much as Pastor Fair. So we love our pastor. Anyway, sorry for that aside. So getting back into the study, we're on question 3 at the bottom of page 53. Jesus rebukes Peter because Satan speaks through Peter. What did Satan try to get Jesus to do at the beginning of his ministry? And before we try to answer that, we'll review Mark chapter 1, verses 12 and 13 when it happens. If anybody already knows, feel free to shout it out. But in verses 12 and 13 of Mark chapter 1, it says, "The Spirit immediately drove him out into the wilderness, and he was in the wilderness 40 days, being tempted by Satan, and he was with the wild animals, and the angels were ministering to him." So, Satan tempted Jesus at the very beginning of his ministry. It's the first thing that happened, that we're told that happened after his baptism by John the Baptist. So, in what ways does Peter continue Satan's work? And we can, these sessions are set up so that they're supposed to be done all in one, but we take it kind of slow and we really dissect things. So I'm going to actually go back and reread these passages. Chapter 8, verse 27 through 38. 27 through 38 reads thus. "And Jesus went on with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi. And on the way, he asked his disciples, 'Who do people say that I am?' And they told him, 'John the Baptist, and others say Elijah, and others one of the prophets.' And he asked them, 'But who do you say that I am?' And Peter answered him, 'You are the Christ.' And he strictly charged them to tell no one about him. And he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things, and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. And he said this plainly. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But turning and seeing his disciples, he rebuked Peter, and said, 'Get behind me, Satan, for you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man.' And calling the crowd to him with his disciples, he said to them, 'If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, and take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? For whoever is ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him will the Son of Man also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels.'" This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So, to reiterate the question, in what ways does Peter continue Satan's work from back when Satan directly tempted Jesus in the wilderness, tempting him with power, tempting him with food, tempting him to put the Lord to the test by showing his power, by jumping from the temple and having angels come and save him and reveal himself in a magnanimous, majestic way at the top of the temple.
He was, the way I felt, Satan was trying to get Jesus away from the will of God.
Yes, absolutely.
That seemed to be the crux of the whole thing.
Right, so at its core, Satan's temptations were to try to pull Jesus away from the will of God, to stop what was coming, to stop Jesus from saving the world, from dying and rising again, and from passing that salvation, bringing that salvation to the world. So Jesus was the suitable sacrifice. Jesus was the spotless, sinless lamb that was commanded. And that, for thousands of years, the Hebrew people were offering sacrifices at the temple, but none of them were truly good enough to atone for sin. Jesus was the ultimate sacrifice, and Satan was trying to stop that from happening by trying to get Jesus to sin. Later, here, on the road to Caesarea Philippi, Satan speaks through Peter, through the mouth of Peter, who, it doesn't tell all of what he said, but he rebuked Jesus. He didn't want it to happen. It's not what he was expecting to happen. It would be terrible. It would be tragedy. It was a terrible tragedy, until it was a glorious victory. But he didn't want it to happen, and he couldn't understand at the time the marvelous effect that it was going to have. He just saw the pain, the suffering that Jesus described, and rebuked him. So Jesus was tempted by Satan directly in the wilderness and was rebuked by Satan indirectly through the mouth of Peter on the road to Caesarea Philippi. Any thoughts before we continue? All right. Question 4. In the context of the Passion prediction, what are the things of God and what are the things of men? And how would you contrast the two? Verse 833 is what that's quoting, where he said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man." So what are the things of man?
Power.
Exactly, all of the things that Satan tempted Jesus with in the wilderness in the first place. Food, physical cravings, the flesh, right? Power over others, power just generally to do as one pleases. Sort of uninterrupted and unshackled by anything at all, even morality, even what's right and wrong. And then admiration, glory, self-aggrandizement. Look at me, I'm great and powerful, right? And that kind of goes hand in hand with power most often, but not always. You look at celebrities, people that they're after fame, to some degree they're after fortune, and these are the things of men. The things of God, in contrast, are self-sacrifice, to will the good of all people, not just yourself, but for your neighbor, every one of your neighbors' neighbors. Ultimately, everybody in the world. John 3:16. God so loved the world. He didn't just love the tribes of Judah. He excuse me. He didn't just love the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. He didn't just love the 12 tribes of Israel. He loved the world. And so we see his love for the world comes at the expense of those three things. He, instead of gratifying his body was tortured horribly to death, was humiliated, not raised up and admired and worshipped, at least not at first, but was humiliated, put to death. Everything he went through would have been bad enough if it had just been an ordinary man, an ordinary innocent man. But it was God himself who not only was innocent, not only is innocent, but never could be anything but innocent. And he gave up power. He gave up earthly power. He gave up an earthly kingdom and armies and cabinets and bureaus and government and power, wealth, all of it. He gave it all up to do something nobler, to do something for us, not for himself. Any thoughts? Any further thoughts? Okay. Question 5. How does Jesus describe the disciples' life in chapter 8, verses 34 through 38? I'll reread that passage. Beginning in 34. And calling the crowd to him with his disciples, he said to them, If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? For what can a man give in return for his soul? For whoever is ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him will the Son of Man also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. So how does Jesus describe the disciples' life in this passage?
Kind of makes me think unashamed, because they are following Jesus.
Yeah, unashamed is a good way to follow Jesus for sure. Because what did he say? Whoever's ashamed of me and of my words, of him will the Son of Man also be ashamed. So yeah, we should be unashamed. We should be unafraid. Even though anyone who follows Jesus is promised suffering, persecution, take up a cross, and give up ultimately your life. Whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel will save it. So really, he's asking us to make all the same sacrifices that he himself made. Give up gratifying the flesh. Give up fame and fortune. Give up earthly power and dominion in favor of the things of God. Salvation, eternal life. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? In what sense is the following statement true? When Christ calls us to follow him, he calls us to die. I think we covered it pretty well. And then the last little sub-question here is, how does St. Paul explain discipleship in Romans chapter 6, verses 1 through 4? And we'll turn there and read that real quick. Romans chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. What shall we say then? Are we to continue in sin that grace may abound? By no means. How can we who died to sin still live in it? Do you not know that all of us who have been baptized into Christ Jesus were baptized into his death? We were buried, therefore, with him by baptism into death, in order that, just as Christ was raised from the dead by the glory of the Father, we too might walk in newness of life. Excuse me. So how does St. Paul explain discipleship here? Walking in newness of life, right? Having been baptized into death and then baptized out of death, right? Our baptism is, excuse me, is a spiritual baptism that puts us in the grave with Jesus and then raises us from the grave with Jesus into a new life, and we're to leave behind the things of the old life. We're to leave behind, what are the big three? Gratification of the flesh, earthly power, fame and glory and riches.
So we're being born again.
Yes, we're being born again.
So that's how he refers to us calling to die, calling us to die, to be born again.
That's right, that's right. So yes, he's calling us to obedience even unto death. But even before that, our baptism is a death of our old self. Very good, thank you. Okay. Now moving on to the second passion prediction and teaching. Unless there's any further thoughts before we continue. So this is in Mark chapter 9, verses 30 through 37, where again Jesus predicts the same things to the same people, and we'll see if their reaction is any different. So Gospel Mark chapter 9, verses 30 through 37 reads thus. They went on from there and passed through Galilee, and he did not want anyone to know, for he was teaching his disciples, saying to them, the Son of Man is going to be delivered into the hands of men, and they will kill him. And when he is killed, after 3 days, he will rise. But they did not understand the saying, and were afraid to ask him. And they came to Capernaum, and when he was in the house, he asked them, what were you discussing on the way? But they kept silent, for on the way they had argued with one another about who was the greatest. And he sat down and called the 12. And he said to them, if anyone would be first, he must be last of all and servant of all. And he took a child and put him in the midst of them. And taking him in his arms, he said to them, Whoever receives one such child in my name receives me, and whoever receives me receives not me, but him who sent me. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So, question 1 on the second passion prediction. Jesus teaches the disciples privately. What new truth about his passion does he reveal? What does he say here that he didn't say back in chapter 8?
About the fact that they aren't to be the greatest, they are there to serve.
Right. Because Jesus himself is not, it came not to be served, but to serve, right? And he's making himself last and making himself servant of all, because he is first. Jesus is first. That's not up for debate. But who else would be first after him must be last of all and servant of all. So what does that reveal about his passion? It's I think it's just talking about how low he's going to become, how low he's going to be put by the humiliation, by the torture, and even down into the earth, into the grave. Why do you think Jesus excluded the crowds from hearing about his passion? Why isn't he announcing this from the rooftops?
He knew that the disciples would be going out to reach beyond what he was teaching. When he was gone, they needed to be the ones to spread the word of the gospel. And if they didn't understand it, that wouldn't help anything. So he wanted to teach them first to make sure they understood.
Yeah. So he's focusing, he's planting his message deep at this time before it gets spread wide, right? He's telling it to the disciples so that they'll get it written on their hearts, know it by heart, be able to recite it off the top of their head. And at the same time, as we talked about in the previous sessions about about his parables, how he, again and again, he told him, I'm teaching you now in parables because you're not ready for the full truth. You're not ready to hear yet. And he's showing them the pattern of the truth without yet telling the public the truth itself. So he's laying the groundwork in the public, in the eyes and ears and the hearts of the public. And another reason was had to do with hold on. Well, I forgot what it was, but if it's important, it'll come back to me. So why were the disciples perplexed by and afraid of his teaching?
They knew it would lead to death.
They knew it would lead to death. Did they not believe him when he told them that he would rise again after the third day? Was it just too scary? This is,
I think they wondered how that would happen, since he was the one that raised others, who there would raise him.
Maybe. Now, this was before he raised Lazarus from the dead.
Yeah.
He's done some miraculous healings. He's done greater works of healing than any prophet before him. But they haven't seen firsthand how that he has the power of life and death in his hands. So it's definitely, it's never been done before. It's never been done since. And so there was no precedent for it. They would have just naturally a hard time believing that that could possibly happen, I'm sure. And then also the logical conclusion of that is they, as followers of him, were going to have to go through the same thing, following unto death, right, and forsaking all the things of the flesh and the glory and the power and things of the world. So yeah, it's a lot to ask of anybody, and nobody, in fact, can perfectly follow in the footsteps of Jesus, and we have to pray every day his forgiveness for our shortcomings. Any thoughts before we continue? Excuse me. Okay, question 2. Although Jesus knows what the disciples have been discussing on their journey, he asks a question in order to create a teachable moment. What assumptions did the disciples likely make about greatness? Probably similar to the assumptions that we hold about greatness today. Greatness is
Similar winning something.
Greatness is readily recognized. Greatness is something that you demonstrate over other people, relative to other people. I'm great. Let's see what's happening right now. The FIFA World Cup is happening in America right now, and teams from different countries all over the world are competing to see who's the greatest at the game of soccer or football. And it's a contest. It's who's better than the other. It's not really a contest of who can serve the other, is it? It's not really a contest of who makes themselves last among all. They're trying to become first. They're trying to show how good they are, how they've built themselves up in their flesh, how they have all this honor and glory and they've earned it by what they've done, by their mighty works of kicking the ball or hitting it with their head, or I'm starting to stretch the metaphor a little bit, but earthly greatness is straightforward. The king is the king because everybody bows down to him, and everyone bows down to him because he's the king. It's kind of self-evident by the crown he wears and the robes and all the people around him. Makes it obvious who the king is. There's not any attending glory like that in the servant in the court, or in the shepherd in the pasture, or the milkmaid, or people who do lowly work that nevertheless lifts up the people around them and brings joy and love and peace. Certainly the king has the power to do good things, but it's not an inherently good job the same way that growing crops to feed people is. it can go different ways. So, where were we? Okay, so greatness. Any further thoughts on greatness? The worldly ideas of greatness and greatness as described by Jesus. Becoming last, becoming servant of all.
Sometimes people seeking greatness are thinking of it as winning, and good things come to them after they win.
Yeah.
And once you reach that peak, where is there to go?
Right.
And it's a human thing to want to, reach that peak, to be at the top, to be great or do really well. But we leave out the part, and we shouldn't, that's the ego, the devil working on us. We do the greatness if we pursue that level of doing something. It should be doing things for others.
Right. So that's another good point, is you can be the greatest today, but what are the chances you're going to still be the greatest tomorrow and next year? It goes down and down and down as you age, and you lose your edge, and other people get inspired and they come up and defeat you. So as an ego thing, it's fleeting. Worldly greatness is fleeting. The players in this World Cup are not the same. Some of them might be, but there's been a lot of turnover since the last one, and certainly since 10 World Cups ago, and they might still know their names, but they're not the greatest anymore. And with time, even their names will be forgotten. Even the names of kings, of emperors, will eventually be forgotten. Everything in this world is fleeting. Everything in this world will be wiped away on the day of judgment.
If we seek greatness, it should be in whatever way that would bring glory to God.
Yes. Greatness, true greatness, is in following God's commands, which are going to bring glory to God, are going to help the people around you. And it's kind of like storing up treasures in heaven instead of on earth, where moth and rust destroy, etc., etc. Okay. Question number 3. In what ways does Jesus' teaching reverse the usual order of the world? I feel like we've covered that. Question 4. How does the little child demonstrate the truth of God's kingdom?
Helping one another no matter their age.
Right? Helping one another no matter their age, and as well, no matter their ability, no matter if somebody's handicapped or mentally ill or physically ill, if they're in an iron lung, or if they're too small to have ever to have ever done anything that we would consider great. A little child is incapable of doing anything. They need everything done for them. And that is the image of the way that we are before God. We are as powerless in the face of God as a newborn baby is to each of us. Completely.
He wants us to need him.
Yeah, we are at his mercy the way a baby is at ours. And when our relationship with him is good, it's like the relationship between a mother and child. warm, just loving as can be, fully trusting, fully caring and provided for, and it's like there's nothing else in the world. Any further thoughts on that before we close out? Any further thoughts on the Bible study or just generally life? Anybody have anything else to share?
I think the way Mark, the teaching the gospel in Mark tend to make you really think.
Yeah.
And I personally, Mark and John were the two gospels that made me think more as I'm going through them.
Yeah.
Paul, you feel like you're on a journey with when
Mhm.
you're going through, not the gospel of Paul, but Acts and Romans and whatnot. You're going through a journey with them. Luke is from a different aspect and very, I would say, kind of mild thinking the way he writes. But Mark, I feel like I'm thinking more when I'm in his gospel.
Yeah. Yeah, the Gospels make us think, and Mark especially inspires a lot of thought because it's very, very straightforward storytelling. He hits the important parts, he lines them up side by side, makes the connections very easy, and it's just this buffet of really, really good spiritual food for thought.
Not just a history.
That's right. It's more than a history. He touches on theology and really inspires us. So on that note, we thank you for coming and joining us here tonight for some spiritual food for thought, and we hope that you'll come to join us next week or even Sunday for some physical food for the body as well as some spiritual food. We're here same time, same place, well, right around 7:15, give or take, every Friday, and again on every Sunday, led by Pastor Fair. So with that, with all that said, let's close out with the Lord's Prayer as he taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Have a good night, everybody. Have a good weekend. We hope to see you Sunday. God bless you. And happy Independence Day. Happy 250th birthday to the United States of America. Amen. Good night.